Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you the podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere, and everyone goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Georgia David, who is a community engagement manager at an international nonprofit. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm very excited. Georgia's got a wonderful story, not just that she's changing the world in her nonprofit, but her steps on getting here, I think, were so purposeful. So I can't wait till we get into that. But listeners, as you know, we always like to start with the icebreaker questions so that we get to know a little bit about Georgia. So tell us where you grew up, how many siblings you have, where you are in the birth order, and kind of how you think that shaped you as an adult and as a person.
Great. So where did I grow up? I grew up kind of in a few different places, but was born in Plainfield, New Jersey. So it's just outside of New York City. Both of my parents were working in the city at the time and had two of us. I'm middle child. So my older brother, Gus, is 2 years older than I am. And my parents were the brave souls to have children in the city and were able to have a lovely home in Plainfield. So that was where I was born, lived there for a few years, and then grew up mostly in the Dallas area, Dallas, Texas, but spent a few years in London, England as well. So my parents were able to, their job brought them out to London for a few years. So I had a very thick British accent when I was little, and then moved back to Texas. And had most of my formative years were there in McKinney, Texas, which is north of Dallas. So kind of all over, but I think that also adds to somebody's life story and kind of a resilient nature of learning how to make friends in different places. So, but yeah, fond memories from each place. I've had two siblings. So I have an older brother, I mentioned before, Gus, who's 2 years older than I am. So we're very close in age and kind of had each step of our lives together through school and whatnot. And then had a little sister, Nancy Jane, who passed away a few years ago. And she was 4 years younger than I am. And she's a big part of my life story. So I'm sure she'll be coming up many times throughout this. But being the middle child, I find a lot of joking similarities of kind of thinking that you're the overlooked one, but I think I really enjoyed that, honestly. I kid about it with my family that my brother would kind of get the attention as the oldest, and then my sister would get all of the things as the baby, and I kind of rode somewhere in the middle. And honestly, I really enjoyed it. I was able to kind of be very independent and subside on my own, and I think I enjoyed that as a person as well. And kind of chicken and the egg. I'm not sure if because I was put in that situation, I really enjoyed it, but certainly have found that I really found my independence at a young age. And yeah, how it influenced me, I think that I'm very thankful to have siblings. My sister is a big, profound part of my story as well, and having had only 21 years with her, but very thankful for my family and my parents. And we all, I live the furthest from them geographically now, but still keep in very close contact with my family and find that that's a big source of my passion. So
And joy and comfort, right? Probably the family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have a very blended family. So my parents are divorced. My mom is remarried. So I have a stepdad and stepsisters. And then my dad has been with his partner for quite a while. And she has daughters and grandchildren. So we have lots and lots of family, and it's growing very quickly. We've got lots of grandkids on both sides. And I really enjoy that. I love, different experiences and different people. And the more people we're bringing into the family, I think the better. And I'm fortunate that my parents have, gotten along through their separation, and and that we can all spend time as a family, because it's still very important to me, even if we have it looks different than the traditional family. But I think that's kind of what gives it character and strength. And we find that it's family time is very important, especially after you lose family members, especially kind of that out of order family with my sister.
Yeah, you expect to lose the grandparents, and the the older generations of your family, but certainly not someone younger than you. That must be tough. So
Yeah.
it sounds like very strong family ties. I am also a middle child, and I
Mm.
totally relate to the feeling overlooked. But I did have some bonuses. I remember my grandmother would buy me presents on my sister's birthdays. But it was funny because my sisters are born on the same day, 3 years apart. So they're born. They have the same birthday, three
Oh,
days
how
apart, three
interesting.
years apart. So she felt sorry for me because they are both having birthdays and they getting gifts. So then I got gifts on their birthday.
That's so sweet. What a good idea.
But it
My
is,
dad sends, or when his mother was alive, on his birthday, he would send his mom flowers every year, which I thought was really sweet. So I try to do that now whenever, actually today is one of my nephew's birthdays, and I texted my sister-in-law, and congratulated her, because I think that's so important too, acknowledging the other people that brought these people into
absolutely.
life.
Yeah, very cool. Well, can I ask what were your parents' profession that went from New Jersey to Texas, then to London?
Yeah, kind of all over. So they actually still own a business together now, a real estate investment firm, but they, at the time, were working um, on the trading floor in New York City. My dad was, and my mom was actually had her own franchise at that point with Jazzercise. My mom was a Jazzercise franchisee, which meant I spent a lot of time in Jazzercises growing up, junior Jazzercise, and had an
Um,
opportunity for my dad to essentially open a new office branch in London for a few years, where they knew it would be um, this time that they would be able to, spend abroad with their family. At the time, just four of us. My sister was actually born there when we lived in London, and they felt like it was a really good opportunity to, live abroad and have their children live abroad. And my mom was able to franchise and be a part of the Jazzercise movement, I guess, there as well, which was really cool too. And then back to Texas. So I had an interesting. I feel like as I progress in my career, I get more and more inquisitive about my parents as well, because I think at least in my head, I have this picture of what it was like, and the more questions I ask, the more I realize it was um, just different than what I had, pictured. And so I had a conversation recently with my parents about that time, and learned how much risk my parents took at that point to do something that they thought would be ultimately a good decision for the family, but kind of went out on a limb career wise, which was interesting. So I thought it was this kind of advancement, but it turns out it was more of a risk than I had in my head. It was very cool that they did that for us.
Yeah. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit then, where are you on the fun meter? So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a couch potato and 5 being life of the party, where would you put yourself?
Oh, I think it depends on the day. COVID's probably changed my fun meter a little bit, but I would say I'm probably pretty middle of the road. I find myself being probably around a 3. I am very social, and I love to meet new people and new experiences and travel and being outdoors and that kind of thing. But I also find a lot of joy in solitude and time with myself, and kind of recharging, whether that's reading or relaxing or running or something independent. Not that those things aren't fun, but I would say not necessarily life at the party is the one with the book in the corner. So probably a solid 3.
Yeah. Well, and being a middle, you're middle of the
Yeah,
road. That's
turn
hard.
of
It's
action.
funny 'cause I've found in a lot of the tests that I've taken as a middle, it's funny, I'm down the middle on so many things. And I just laugh about that because I can go this way or that way. I can be with
Mhm.
my older sister or my younger sister or with both. And, yeah, it was quite interesting.
That's a
Okay.
good point to note.
On the risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being low risk taking and 5 higher risk taking, where would you put yourself?
This one I'm not as much in the middle, so maybe I'm getting out of my middle child space for this one. But I would say I'm higher, probably somewhere between a 4 and 5. I love taking risks, and I love adrenaline rushing activities. So I've skydived 6 times, and bungee jump and anything to kind of get adrenaline rushing. I am there. So probably higher on the risk taking. If you ask my family, they'd probably score me at a 5, but I think there are people probably doing more riskier things than I am. So I'd say maybe 4.
Very cool. And did that start at a very young age, the adrenaline? I mean, are you like one of them roller coaster, got to be on the roller coaster, that kind of thing?
Yes, definitely. I think I remember from a young age of like on the swing when you kind of get to that point when you feel your stomach drop of going so high. Um, I remember loving that, probably much to my parents' dismay.
Oh,
Yeah, roller coasters and yeah, any new toy I always wanted to try, and I love um, yeah, kind of doing things that just get you excited, and that's what gets me excited. So yeah, definitely has not been a learned attribute, something that I've had for a long time.
I love those two questions because as we go through your interview, we'll see both of those kind of play out, as well as how you grew up in the birth order and all of that. So let's get into what it means to be a community engagement manager, and then we'll talk a little bit about how did I get here.
Such a good question. When you said that in the intro, I had to kind of think for a second. Yeah, it is interesting to think how everybody gets to where they are. I had a therapist one time tell me it was like um, a plink or a plinko board, like the game on Price is Right, where you kind of can go down one avenue and then hit something, and you're on the completely opposite side. And I feel like that was a good, accurate representation of just life and how you get to different places.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about being a community engagement manager.
Yeah, so I'm that's my title. I'm with Water for People, which is an international nonprofit or NGO. We are based in Denver, but we have offices around the world. We have 11 offices total, so one here in the US. We have a couple of staff in Great Britain, so technically an office there, and then 9 other offices in the countries where we work. So all throughout Latin America, Africa, and India. And my role sits within our business development department. So primarily what I'm in charge of is unrestricted fundraising, and specifically through volunteer committees. So we have these amazing volunteers across the US and Canada who host events to fundraise, and really just kind of spread advocacy and information about Water for People to primarily people within the water and wastewater sector, but also to others outside of it. So Water for People works within clean water and sanitation, and our goal is to bring both of those to everyone forever. So the tagline is everyone forever. So it's really reaching all schools, communities, healthcare systems, really the most marginalized and hardest to reach individuals, and forever. So it's a very sustainable, audacious goal, but the idea is that we're essentially working ourselves out of our own jobs. So to enter somewhere with the intent of exiting, and to not have communities or individuals or governments relying on foreign aid, but instead equipping them with the tools to be able to subside without us. And something I really appreciated about that when I was looking for my next step was finding a place that not only I understood and appreciated and was able to kind of wrap my arms around what the work is, but also as just an individual, I think that's a very noble way of going about your business, and I think it really aligned with my personal views of figuring out others' strengths and helping them realize those, and then amplifying those, and not necessarily having to take center stage. And Water for People does such a good job of just empowering and enabling and you know, as I said, having people not relying on us for it. It's really working in these communities, with the local governments, co-financing. It's all combined kind of collaborative effort, which I again love. So my role is really to fundraise, but for me, it's a lot more than that. I really believe in what we're doing, which is a huge piece of um, joy for me. And I get to work with people who also love doing it too. So I'm, just beyond grateful because I get inspired when I talk to the supporters that I get to work with, and always come away with new stories of how they're connected, and kind of doing what you do with this is, get to really know somebody and walk away from those experiences kind of being reinvigorated myself of the job that I get to call my job. And Water for People does such a good job of practicing what we preach in terms of empowering others in the communities where we work, but also empowering internally. And I've found that to be a really lovely, um, connection. And yeah, it also, in my role encompasses quite a bit more than that too, just with events and community outreach efforts. I work on all our big conferences. I do some more technical volunteering, so our World Water Corps with those who want to go and do more specific hands-on technical work. So it's changes daily, but it's a really enjoyable, noble role, which I'm very very proud to be a part of.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing amazing work and love your organization, and sounds like you're in your dream job. So let's talk about then, how did I get here?
Sure.
When you were a young person, junior high, high schoolish, did you at that time kind of pursue, oh, you're more like in the water or engineering field, or were you looking at NGOs, or what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, not at all. I don't think certainly not water. This is my first time kind of entering the water and wastewater sector. I was aware of NGOs because both my parents were pretty involved with some local nonprofits, so that was certainly on my radar. It was not necessarily the ultimate goal I was working toward. I studied in college general studies, so communications and marketing. I majored in communication studies and at University of San Diego, and minored in marketing with an emphasis in sports, because at the time I had some internships throughout college in sports specifically, which I really enjoyed, and ultimately led me to my first full-time role outside of college was with the Kansas City Chiefs NFL team in Kansas City, and worked within their PR department, and ultimately found a home in community outreach. And what I did there was worked with kind of different subsects of the organization. So the women's organization, the youth football outreach. I worked with our players and their foundations. Worked internally with our own Hunt Family Foundation, which is the ownership of the Kansas City Chiefs, the Hunt family. So kind of had a really wonderful introductory experience into what nonprofit was, because I got such a multitude of knowledge from each of these different nonprofits that we worked with. So it ranged from working in hunger relief to military outreach to domestic violence issues to um, you know so many. I probably worked with, or did an event in conjunction with, or helped to do some sort of outreach with close to maybe somewhere between 100 and 150 different nonprofits annually. So it was all sorts of things, grants. The Ambassadors Foundation is what I was a big part of as well. So it's all the former players at Kansas City who have a nonprofit that they fundraise for and then give grants to. So all that being said, it was this really holistic view of nonprofit as a whole, which was such a wonderful eye-opening experience. And then being on the for-profit side, working for the team, kind of a different viewpoint into how companies can engage in corporate social responsibility, which is such a, kind of a buzzword these days, CSR initiatives, and how you can make a difference in a for-profit entity. And so eventually, this is when my sister definitely comes into the picture in a big way in my life and career. Is my sister passed away in 2017, which is about 3 years ago. And at the time, I was still working for the Chiefs. I worked for them for about 4 years. And my fiance at the time, now my husband and partner, he and I had been kind of dabbling and talking about, hey, what if we move somewhere that we both really want to be? He was from Kansas City, and we were kind of thinking it'd be fun to have a new chapter somewhere, but really didn't move much on it because we both had wonderful jobs. I was really enjoying my job at the Chiefs and finding a lot of both personal and professional growth there. So it didn't feel like the right time. And then in the middle of all that, my little sister passed away in a car accident. So it was super sudden and very unexpected, and just shifted a lot of things and priorities. And one big one for both my husband Cody and I was, hey, what are we, if we want to be somewhere else, if we want to be doing something else, if there that you know life is so futile and fleeting, and not to be too dramatic, but just how quickly life can change. And what that looked, the timeline for us then looked so different. Just knowing that we, especially as young people and young professionals, you feel very invincible, and just as a young person in general, I think you do. And I think that was kind of a wake up call of um, unfortunately, life is not guaranteed. And so we took some time, obviously still grieving. Grief is certainly a process. It's not a check mark. um, it's still something that's very present in my life to this day, and will be forever. But took a period to kind of mourn and grieve and really reassess what we were doing, and ultimately made the decision that we wanted to move to Colorado. And it was something that we had both really enjoyed. The state growing up as children, had wonderful memories. It was close enough to both of our homes that we felt that it was not too far away if we needed to be home for some reason. And anyways, that brought us out here, which was a really kind of leap of faith of we'll see where we end up, both professionally. And for me, I was able to kind of step back and reassess where I wanted to be in my career. And something that I did an exercise of, what were parts of my job that I really loved, what are parts that I could have changed, where was I finding joy and energy and excitement and growth, which was so important to me. And that led me to thinking, hey, what if I kind of flip-flopped and instead of worked on the for-profit side, worked on the not-for-profit side of these organizations I was working with. And that at the time then was wonderful timing. There was a role with Special Olympics Colorado, which is based here in Denver, or in the Denver area. I was in Centennial, for those who are familiar, and had a wonderful tenure there, and spent the last handful of years with them in a few different roles. And this is such a long answer to your question, but I feel like I didn't do it justice if I explained it all. But again, back to the Plinko board thing, it kind of shifted based on where I was at that point. But
there's so many pieces here. It's very exciting. Thank you for sharing all of that. And isn't it interesting when you have a really a trauma in your life, it really causes you to pause, right, and think about priorities and how short life really is. So that's obviously a very big pivotal moment for you. When you talked about college and have internships and stuff, were you participating in sports at the time? And then you said you got these internships. I mean, was sports kind of a big part of your growing up?
Sure. So I didn't play in college. I played intramurals and loved sports from a competitive standpoint, definitely a very competitive person. But didn't play any college sports, was able to kind of dabble and have fun with sports, which was great after having played sports growing up. But no, my first internship in college was with the sports marketing department at University of San Diego. They offered it on campus. It was something that I was taking some marketing classes, and I was like, oh, this might be a good fit. And did as you do as an intern, passed out coupons, and I think I had to, our biggest thing was trying to drive traffic to the games. So, any sort of promotional, night or event or giveaways, giving away t-shirts as people come in. So certainly, very, very grassroots, but it was really a great experience. And if nothing else, it was wonderful first kind of like foot in the door on the resume of what I was, hopefully going to turn into a career at that point. So that was my first internship. I think I was a sophomore. And then I was able to work for Integrated Sports Marketing, which is a sports agency in San Diego. So I had applied with them online. I found, I believe it was, I think I just had Googled around. I was pretty, I still am fairly ambitious, I say, I think. But just, hey, apply to all these things, see, throw things against the wall, see what sticks. So then I worked with them and worked on a few different events, but mainly Drew Brees was one of their clients. So I worked on his golf classic. So he had a nonprofit arm that was through his foundation, and they had this big annual golf classic that was in the San Diego area every year. He's from the area in Southern California, so it was kind of home for him. So my role with them was with PR. So I remember I was so excited because one of the guests, the celebrity golfers, was the guy who plays Kevin in The Office, and I'm a big Office fan, so that was very exciting for me at the time. The clientele and celebrities there to bring them from interview to interview, help to record and transcribe and make sure that we had an accurate depiction of the media presence at the event. Worked on some press releases and did social media for them. So that was kind of that role. From there, I was able to kind of parlay that and had met somebody who worked for the Padres through that, and was able to kind of join their team as what was dubbed a collegiate marketing advisor, which I think is a very, very ambitious use of words for that. It was, but it was great. That was a great experience as well, and it was my first professional team that I was able to put on my resume, which I think was very helpful, and helped them in kind of increasing awareness around their college nights at their games. And then eventually led to the biggest internship, which ended up being my first paid internship, which was obviously a very helpful thing, especially as a college student, which was with the San Diego Chargers at the time. Now they're the LA Chargers, but worked in their media relations PR department, and worked for training camp, and then was able to stay on staff there for the season. And similarly with the others, did a lot of transcribing, did a lot of media relations efforts, and what that looked like was a lot of screen time of editing media guides and working on releases, and a lot of projects. And that was my senior year, so that was kind of a chronological story. So yes, lots of internships. Big fan of internships. I think it's a huge, if you can, it's especially paid internships. I see that being more of a people gravitating those toward that now as the employers having more of those opportunities for paid internships, which I think is the right move. I think while the unpaid internships were super helpful in terms of the networking and the ability, I also think there's something to be said about working for free, and that's not an opportunity that everybody is able to do. So I think as much paid internships as possible is definitely a very helpful source. And yeah, it was helpful to also weed out what I didn't want to do, which I think is just as important to find out what you don't want to do as what you do want to do.
Interviews, and same thing. One of the gals went on and on about she had, like you, I think, at least a half a dozen, maybe more internships, and really helped her understand, what the career that she thought she wanted to get into, what it was really like. Because what they present, in academia may or may not be how then that translates for that particular organization. So
Absolutely.
I sure appreciate you going through all those steps because
Sure.
what was going through my head was how do you get from college to NFL? You know,
Yeah.
that's a pretty
Just
big deal. And
yeah, it was very
it
exciting.
must be
And thankfully to
thrilled.
be in a place that had an NFL team, in my college town. So that certainly helped to propel.
Yeah, yeah, that you weren't in a smaller college town that just had college sports. You actually had professional sports and such. So then also you had sounds like it's such a great experience in an overview of nonprofits. You got to see,
Mhm.
those who were on the philanthropic side who were contributing and what they wanted to do with the money that they brought to it. What were their causes? You got to see probably the people who were the receivers. I mean, it sounds like you were all of what great experience.
It was, yes, it was amazing. And I think, especially being in a city like Kansas City too, I had moved there for my job out of college and had never really honestly been anywhere in the Midwest. I think the furthest into the Midwest I had gone to maybe Oklahoma, but had really no experience or knowledge of what Kansas or Missouri were like, or Kansas City. So moved there sight unseen into this apartment, and ended up having this wonderful experience. And I think what was so wonderful, what made it so wonderful was that the city itself was so philanthropic and really giving and loving, and just really a community that expected organizations to give back, which I certainly appreciated. Obviously, with that being my role, definitely some job security with that, but also, I think the reception of us being in the community was received so well. So it made my job so much easier, and it really opened my eyes to the just vast breadth of nonprofits, and what amazing organizations, they can be, especially with great leadership and with, ardent supporters. Nonprofits can really change the world, and I was so inspired, and really thankful for that opportunity to see that at again such a young age, just kind of being, a few years out of college and starting work in that field.
Yeah, it's almost like a master's in business for nonprofits. I mean, for you to have exposure to that many, and then also to get a glimpse of the for-profit side and really see kind of how everybody was running their business, how they were running their organizations. That's pretty powerful. That's great experience at such a young age.
Absolutely. I'm eternally grateful, and the Chiefs organization was wonderful to work for. And my, have many friends that are still there, and just felt like it was, just very thankful. Just a lot of gratitude for that chapter of my life.
Very cool. So bring us now back to, so I think I kind of interrupted you when you got to the Special Olympics, but I just had so many questions about the internship and internships and the nonprofits and stuff. So you moved to Colorado and you get a job at the Special Olympics. So tell us a little bit about that, and then also then how you got into Water for People.
Sure. I know. I'm sorry I was long-winded with that answer earlier. Um,
Very thorough.
yeah. So,
I like
yeah,
it.
very thorough. I know. Maybe yeah, that's definitely a trait of mine. Very thorough. I was really grateful for the opportunity with Special Olympics as well. So my growing up, I have a cousin, Will, who has Down syndrome, and he's a few years older than I am. So very familiar with, intellectual disabilities and the special needs space, and then also sports. So it was this beautiful combination of two things that I was really passionate about. So it was again a wonderful next step. I'm very I just keep using the word grateful, but I'm very grateful that I was able to take some time to decide. I took about 3 months. So we had a kind of a an accelerated timeline, I guess, when I think about it. Between we moved, and had gotten married, and my sister had passed away all in the same year. So it was a lot of transition and a lot of self reflection, and um, just a really really important time in my life. I was able to take a few months to kind of settle a little bit, and then I was casually searching, but at that point was able to kind of really recalibrate, I think is probably a good word for that time for me. And anyways, had found this role with Special Olympics. So my first title there was a very, very long one. So it was manager of, let's see if I can get this off, volunteers, family services, and athlete leadership. So it was
Oh, it
quite
is a long
a
title.
title. Yeah. It had to go in small print on my business card because it was such a long title.
It's
But
on the
it was,
back, wrapped around the back.
I know, yeah, exactly. Um, but the nice part about it is it really was very encompassing of my role. I definitely didn't have to explain much about what I was doing. It was, it was very detailed. Um,
It was
but
also your job description. It was your title and your job description all in.
exactly, it's all on my LinkedIn. That's just what it is. It's just my title. But yeah, so it was so Special Olympics Colorado is the local entity here. So the way Special Olympics is organized is that there's Special Olympics International, which is based out of Washington D.C., and then there are separate 501c3s, so different charity licenses, essentially state by state here in the U.S. and then country by country throughout the rest of the world. There's a few exceptions with Canada and some other countries that have a little more, you know, similar structure to here in the States, but that's primarily how it's run. So I worked for the state office here in Colorado and was just so grateful for that first experience and into working on the nonprofit side. Um, and my role was really diverse, as the title as the title explains. So kind of got an experience of working in volunteer management, which was my first time doing that, and that really helped to propel me into this role with Water for People. But that encompassed, recruiting people to volunteer at over 100 events a year. We worked within our coaching sphere. I worked within the young athletes events with our state competitions, so kind of the competitive piece of it, and then also the non-competitive. So if we had fundraising events, they did annual plane pulls and polar plunges and different types of events throughout the state to raise funds. I would be in charge of all of the volunteer recruitment and kind of training for each of those. So that was quite a wide swath of responsibilities. And then also family services and athlete leadership, which I loved both of those as well. Athlete leadership was really, really particularly wonderful because I was able to be pretty creative with it and helped to start a few different programs throughout that time. And then ended up being promoted into a role of director of marketing and communications with them. So was able to kind of utilize all of the tools I had gathered throughout the rest of those roles and in learning how to manage our website and utilize backend CRM tools and figuring out how to run our social media channels and things like that, and was able to work with an amazing team and had a lot of support of a few members on the team who were within that department as well. And I think my biggest takeaway from that experience with Special Olympics was, learning like I said, with the internships, similarly coming from a very, very corporate atmosphere to a pretty small nonprofit in terms of staff. It was around 40 people. So I guess it depends on what you term as small, but the pros and cons of both of working with a really large, amount of people and kind of a more, like I said, corporate environment to a smaller environment and kind of figuring out what I liked and what I disliked and how I could best bring, my full self to the both of those entities, and learning where my limitations existed within those as well. And so when Water for People's opportunity came up with this role as community engagement manager, it was a really exciting opportunity to bring, I think, both of the things that I really enjoyed about both of my last two organizations and roles into one. So I had been a fan of Water for People just as a human, separate from the role that I now serve in, and knew it was here in Denver and had kind of kept an eye out and was able to, um, move into this position, and it's been about a year now, which is really exciting. So celebrate my year anniversary in a couple weeks with Water for People, um, and have just been so happy. The level of um, intellect and the level of um, just care that the colleagues that I get to work with have is really wonderful. I find myself being really challenged, which is really important to me within my professional life. Um, I'm always learning, which I think is something else that I find really important in my job. I get to be creative, but then I also get. I know this is kind of a I don't know. I feel like it's a more of a new agey thing, but I find it so important to myself is finding that balance between your work and your life. And I think after having lost Nancy Jane, a few years ago, I think that really put into light what an important piece of my life is finding that balance between the two, and being able to take time off and enjoy time with family. And when I'm on and I'm working hard, but when I'm off and I get to really um, spend time with people that I really care about. And I think that's a huge benefit that I'm really enjoying and really appreciative of with Water for People.
Wow. Well, so it sounds like you're in your dream job. You get to do purposeful work. You have the work life balance or the lifestyle that you want, and you're making a difference. I mean, how exciting is that? So, uh, wow. So, would you say dream job?
Yeah, I would definitely say dream job. I think, I've been fortunate enough that I probably, if you had asked me this at any stage of my career, I would have said that was the dream job of what I wanted at that point. I think that's an important point for me is that, if I'm finding myself um, feeling, I don't know, feeling well, like you mentioned in the intro, feeling stuck or feeling, like in a state of transition. I realize, okay, it's either time to reassess what I'm doing right now and figure out if talk to my supervisor, talk to colleagues, and figure out how I can um, do a better job or find a different way to be doing my job so I do find fulfillment in it, or maybe it's time for a new role. And I think um, certainly have been fortunate enough to have worked for three different organizations that I really have much respect for, and have found my dream job within each of those. So right now this is definitely has been such a dream for me. I'm really happy.
Well, that's awesome. And Georgia, I got to tell you, I could talk to you all afternoon, but we do probably need to start wrapping up here so that we have there is kind of a time limit to these
Absolutely.
conversations. Even though I could keep going, I have other questions for you, but let's kind of wrap up. I think one of my favorite wrap up questions is what when you look back at your career so far. What do you think served you best? Is there a particular maybe characteristic or maybe strength of yours, or maybe it's an approach to life or approach to your career? What do you think served you best over the time?
Yeah, I have been a good question. I have been fortunate to work with a lot of people that I surround myself with a lot of people who I really get to learn from and am really inspired by. I think something that has served me is empathy, and understanding that everybody has their limitations, including myself, and um, coming at situations from with empathy, being an empath, um, having understanding that people can make mistakes, and giving myself the freedom and the permission to do so. um, I find that that's a really freeing way to live, and to work. So that's something that I definitely lean on. A phrase that's used in our department often, which I love and use as kind of my mantra and motto often, is assume positive intent. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the empathy is just, meeting people where they're at and understanding that all of us are going to have those days and we're all going to have those times in our lives and, you know, assuming positive intent in every interaction that you have, whether it's with your colleagues or externally or your family or whomever, is a really helpful tool for me and being able to understand myself better, understand how I can be a better teammate, and then also just giving grace, I think, in all of those things. So empathy is really important to me.
I love all of those things that you just said. I got to tell you, I wish when I was in my 20s and starting out that I had those three phrases: empathy, assuming positive intent, and giving grace. I think I started out pretty, I don't want to say intense, but a need to prove myself,
Mhm.
which I don't think included those three words. Those were things that I learned later, and then recognized how valuable they were. I think I number one, I never applied those things to myself, so therefore I didn't apply them to others,
No,
which
I
didn't
absolutely
necessarily
understand.
help me.
Well, I'm gonna tell you to give yourself grace because I'm sure you had those things. Maybe it just wasn't as apparent.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they weren't as apparent at the time, or you know what? The other thing is they weren't as common of leadership traits at the time. So this is in
Mhm.
the 80s. And so, when I kind of came up in the 80s and 90s, I think the terms in the leadership programs that we were in was about situational leadership, um, managing crucial conversations. It's like some of this other stuff didn't come up until I think, once you find a word that really fits, that's a
Mhm.
good point. So maybe I did possess these things, but those words weren't there. So, um, but you're right. I do remember now that I think about it. One of the things that I wanted to bring to my leadership was that I built trust with my colleagues, so that if
Mhm.
something did go wrong or something seemed like it wasn't going in the right direction, my first thought was, well, that doesn't sound like so and so. I need to go check with him or her first and
Mhm.
find out, not just jump on this bandwagon of, this is how they operate, or can you believe they made that decision, or this is where. Yeah, so I think that I was maybe assuming positive intent. I just didn't know that was the right phrase for, or such a very descriptive phrase for it.
Yeah, um I think you're right. I am feeling because I mentioned this before, but I have had these conversations lately with my parents about in their careers and what they have found at my age, and you know, um, I think that's why I kind of hesitated on the work life balance because I feel like it's kind of got this, I don't know, new agey, important, and maybe it's using a different term for it, but whatever that balance looks like for you.
Yeah. One of my core competencies actually was to create this balance. And without having kids and being in a corporate environment, I could have easily just worked until 10 o'clock every night, or however long I
Mhm.
wanted. But I really created balance for myself. I worked and went to school part time. I worked and I played volleyball and I worked out. And so for me, it was important to, I had to have that release. And like how can you give while you're there? But then when I'm not there, how can I release and let it go? And that's also a good part of mental health and physical health. So,
Absolutely. May I ask you that question?
which one?
Just what would you say is something that you've found that has really helped you throughout your career, a phrase or a word or a
Oh,
moniker?
no one's asked me that. I always sometimes I just throw it in. But so I would say there's a couple things. One is that maybe it's all just around one thing, which is building relationships and the
Mhm.
trust that goes with them, so that you do have that positive intent, right? So that when things do go sideways, and they do, or they might appear that they're going sideways, that it's part of, we're in this together. How do we look at this? This is what's going on for my department, what's going on for your, there's that you seek to understand. But if you
Mhm.
don't have those good relationships a lot of times, or maybe a strong trusting relationship, then sometimes you can just make assumptions about intent, that it doesn't serve you. So yeah, I would say, building relationships. And now that I'm no longer in corporate and I'm in more of this entrepreneurial space, I'm finding that does serve me well in this space too. I do a lot of networking, and in that,
Mhm.
I'm just naturally curious about people's what they do, how they're different, how they got there, all of that. So to me, that's building these relationships and being curious. um, so thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks for sharing. We actually did this leadership journey through Water for People. There's a group of us that have been a part of this series, and one of the words that we focused on was curiosity. So interesting you mentioned that. There was so much literature and a really good TED talk we watched about the importance of curiosity and how that really forms a good leader. So you're right on par with that.
Yeah, because sometimes I think there's an expectation that when you're the leader, you should know. But really, I think the expectation is you should be curious to know what you don't know, and
Hmm.
what and to trust what others know and seek what others know, so that I'm a big believer in, more heads and more brains on a problem or on a solution or whatever is going to get to a better outcome than just me standing in one place going, oh well, this is what I think we should do. So how do you find that collective collective solution? So
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure who's ever has worked for you and with you really appreciates that about you.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, again, Georgia, I could keep going. Just like when we met for the first time, I think, well, how long was our our coffee that morning? Of course, part of it was one of the first times that we could meet in person, right? So I think we were both kind of craving that. Oh, we're in person. Uh, we're out of the house. This
I
is
know,
very
it was so exciting.
well. I do need to wrap up. Do you have any last words of wisdom?
Um, that's good. I think just being for me, what I think when I look back, this has been helpful to kind of reminisce a little bit, but to for anybody who is starting out in their career, I obviously am fairly still young in my career. I've, 8 years into my professional life, um, but I think what I would share with myself if I were able to go back to the beginning of it is just um, the gravity of the situation in the moment may seem like the end all be all, and this decision is going to change everything, and if you make the wrong one, it's just going to be the most terrible thing, and it's not. And life will go on, and having dealt with some really uh, um, you know really deep personal trauma, I think that unfortunately that situation happened, but fortunately it was able to really help to clarify the important things in life, and career is still a huge piece of my life and something I find a lot of joy and fulfillment in. But knowing that what decisions you're going to make, making sure you're making the right one for yourself at that time, and then what if that's not the right one for you in 6 to 12 to however long months, you can make a new one. So kind of letting everybody to make those decisions and make them confidently, and then make other ones if you need to. And I don't know, that might be a good thing that I wish I would have had that perspective prior to the loss of my sister.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's just good to be in action, right? Taking action on something versus in your head
Hmm.
thinking about, oh, is this the right decision? Well, if I do this, then that's going to play out and this is going to play. So there's this mapping we do, right? And next thing you know, you can spiral up into
Yeah,
anxiety or spiral down.
absolutely.
And I guess I'm learning so much through all these podcasts on how people, and many times I think that's one of the common themes is about, you know, just you need to be moving forward doing something. And you might think oh, am I going to make a mistake? And it's really about, no, it's no mistake, because you're learning, you're growing, you got experience, and then you can put that on the resume and then find that next thing, and it might lead you, and most likely it's going to lead you to that next thing, whether it was a good fit or a bad fit. Now you know, and whereas before you didn't know. You were just making
Absolutely.
something up about it. So wow, well, all great words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below so you're alerted of other interviews as they come about. And if you have any questions for me or for Georgia, you can post them on my website, lifestorycurator.com. And I'll also include Georgia's contact information if you want to get in touch with her directly. Or to learn more about Water for People. It's a great organization. So on that note, listeners and Georgia, thank you so much. And everybody, stay safe and stay well. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.